young children and their caregivers, the importance of collecting very targeted and specific data on infants and toddlers, and using a combination of methods, including observation, to be able to have a more nuanced understanding of how they experience the public realm. So we know a number of the cities are already in the process of collecting data for baseline data for your projects, and that's really great to see. And today you'll have a chance to the opportunity to hear from the ministry's data analytics and management unit about some of the innovative data collection tools that they have developed. So with that, I would first, we're very thankful to have Mr. Rahul Kapoor, the Director of Smart Cities Mission, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, here with us. So thank you for making time to be here, and I would ask you to just kick off this session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nandini. It's great to be back in the Nurturing Neighborhood Challenge webinar. And of course, very good afternoon to everyone, especially the 25 cities that made progress in the first stage of the Nurturing Neighborhood Challenge. And of course, as I can understand, most of you have appointed the nodal officers in your team, created the necessary team to implement and scale up these pilot interventions that you had made, and definitely refined your pilot projects with stakeholder engagement. Yeah, Vipul, I think your mic is on, so if you can kindly mute it. Thank you. So we would definitely like to acknowledge the good progress that some of the cities have made. Cities like Bengaluru, Coimbatore, Hubli Dharwad, Hyderabad, Kakinada, Kochi, Kota, Rohtak, Rourkela, and Vadodara. And I am a bit concerned about some of the cities like Dharamshala, Ranchi, Indore, Ujjain, and Trivandrum. I think these cities seem to be having some difficulties in moving forward and need to increase the pace. So, of course, full support is available from the ministry's side. The WRI team is there to help you. So please get in touch with them, or whatever you need to basically iron out the issues that you're facing today, and consider them as an extension of your team. So you have to understand, actually being 25 cities, the whole country is looking towards you, because you're supposed to be those lighthouses that will implement and scale up the first set of interventions that the Smart Cities mission would be implementing in the nurturing neighborhood space. So I would request you, you've already made the cut, you've already gone through an extensive selection process and reached this stage. So this is the opportunity to become a winner here and showcase your city positively and become lighthouses for others to follow. So kindly put in your best foot forward, especially those cities that are currently facing difficulties in implementation of these challenges. And like I mentioned, the ministry's team, the WRI team, we're all there to support you. And of course, even our partners, BVLF, who can definitely help us with through technical guidance in this regard. So now as you're starting with your pilot projects, one important thing that I need to tell you about is how you should basically focus upon data to ensure that these projects that you're working on are founded on evidence. So this evidence-based planning that we keep talking about, and the layer that we want to build upon, so as to create a reference, and that will help you assess whether you've been able to achieve the outcomes that you have set out to achieve with regard to these challenges. So creating the baseline data would be the start. Try and see that what are those data indicators or data points that would feed into this and basically help us get a better understanding of the whole ecosystem around children and the caregivers. So the team here at the ministry is also working on creating some of those indicators. WRI team is also working towards the same end. So let us all converge here, and all this would be possible only through your intervention. So I would request all these 25 cities, please cooperate with the ministry's team and the WRI team with regard to getting this information that would help us understand the overall IITC and sector better. So today in this webinar, we are going to see some of the use cases that the team have drawn up. And I'm sure it would be very interesting to see that how it can be very useful to, for all of us. And I look forward to looking at these use cases. All the best, and over to you, Nandini. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your encouraging words. I'll introduce now Gina Savla, the Data Analytics and Management Unit, to give you an overview of what we'll be discussing today and to introduce the first use case as well. Gina, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Nandini. Hello, everyone. We're the Data Analytics and Management Unit at the Ministry. We're set up under the Smart Cities mission to institutionalize data-driven governance in urban India. One of the projects that we're also overseeing is mainstreaming data collection and use of data to make sure that our cities are working for young children and their caregivers. Today, we're going to show some of the use cases that we've developed so that you're able to think about your site for pilot projects a bit better. You're able to understand and figure out who your target audience is and understand the needs of your target audience a bit better. We're going to show 4 pilot use cases today. 2 of them have undergone basic testing for development. However, we welcome all of the cities that are part of this challenge to adopt some of the methodologies that we're going to lay out today and adopt some of the use cases, some of the particular facets of the use case to apply to projects that are that may be exactly the same as the use case or that are related projects. So the first use case that we have today next, ma'am. The first use case that we have today is essentially, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Thanks. The first use case that we have today is essentially how do we target the young children and the young children, the infants and the toddlers between 0 to 5 that are most at risk of air pollution. Once we're able to identify them, then we might be able to identify exactly the neighborhoods in which we want to undertake air quality improvements. So before I present the methodology to you, I would like to share three facts. First is that infants and toddlers breathe 30 to 40 breaths per minute, whereas for an adult, that is 12 to 18 per minute, which means that an infant and toddler takes in more number of breaths, more air, and hence more pollution per minute than an adult. Next. Secondly, the air quality at the base, closer to the ground, the density of nitric oxide, sulfuric oxide, ozone, and PM2 particles is much more than it is at higher levels. So the air quality at 95 centimeters length, closer to the ground, that is at the height of an infant and a toddler, is much more dense with these pollutants than it is as we go up. And we all understand the risk that air pollution causes in the development, especially the early years of development for young children. And hence, it's extremely important to address air quality issues. Third facet is that our cities, we measure air pollution at very broad zonal levels. We have air quality monitoring stations in cities, either by CPCB or state monitoring stations. These essentially give an accurate picture of only 2 square kilometer radius, perhaps. So in a city of Delhi, which has about 32 stations, we approximately, each station actually covers 40 square kilometer radius, but a neighborhood is just 0.6 square kilometer radius. So we're not, the air quality data that we see coming out of these monitoring stations is absolutely not representative of the air quality that is experienced by at the neighborhood scale, and especially at for young children at the height of 95 centimeters. So how do we then identify, starting from the broad level of a city, how do we identify which are the kids that are most at risk of air pollution? Let's go to the methodology. So first, let's identify broad zones based on the CPCB monitoring data. From that, let's look at zones that are most at risk. Then we go to neighborhoods that where infants and toddlers are in very high density. After that, once we've gone into these neighborhoods, then we can get street level data based on air quality monitors, which are much more mobile. Next. So this is the map of Delhi, and what we have here is we have point data of all of the air quality monitors. You can do the same, geolocate all the air quality monitoring stations in your city. Roughly, they will give you an accurate picture of only 2 square kilometer radius, which is fine. That is an okay starting point. Look at the data that you see for a year, annual, monthly data. Based on that, you'll know what are approximate zones in your city that have decent air quality and the ones that have consistently poor air quality. Once you've done that, zoom into neighborhoods that have consistently poor air quality. Next. In those neighborhoods further, one way to identify where your infants and toddlers are at, since we don't have geolocational data of all our civilian population, geolocating Anganwadis or creches are a good proxy to tell us which are those neighborhoods in these zones where young children most frequent. So here we have in red dots, what we have is essentially Anganwadis marked out. Once we identify parts of the neighborhood which have a very high cluster of Anganwadis, we deploy step 3. Here we take air quality monitoring stations and we walk the streets with those air quality monitors, which are these mobile devices, handheld mobile devices. We walk the neighborhoods of these, neighborhoods, and we're able to record street-wise what is the air quality data. It is advisable that these monitors are adjusted at 95 centimeters from the ground. So whether it's a bicycle or any kind of mobility, any kind of, so the device is held at 95 centimeters on the ground, or if you have a personnel that is conducting the survey, potentially hold the device in a bag at 95 centimeters, so you get accurate data for the child. So based on this, we go to step 4, the kind of analysis that we have. Sorry, yeah, you can stay here. Here, the kind of analysis that we see here, the red zones are actually areas where the air quality is very, very poor based on these handheld air quality devices. And the ones in blue are areas that are much better off. And hence, we know that the children that frequently visit or children that live in zones that are red are most at risk in the city. And hence, these can be priority areas for us to undertake interventions to improve air quality. So I'll stop here. This is a very simple exercise that you can undertake in about 2 weeks, actually, from start to finish. Starting from figuring out where your air quality monitoring stations are, then to figuring out which are the neighborhoods that are most at risk, and then doing this street-wise survey to figure out exactly what your targets areas are. If you have any questions, we can open the floor for a 5-minute quick Q&A. If we don't, then perhaps we can go through all of the use cases and then collect all questions at the end. Great. So with this, I invite my colleague Naman to present the second use case that we've developed.
Thank you so much, Jinal, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. Thanks, Mayank. So if you happen to have a project site that is an Anganwadi, park, or a playground that needs improvement, so you may want to look through the lens of sensory experiences in these areas and improve them so as to provide an enriching play environment for infants and toddlers. So this use case is a framework to assess Anganwadi play areas on sound, smell, and touch. Next. Sorry, Mayank, next. Yeah. So in the early childhood, children use their senses to explore the world around them and make sense of it. So they do so by touching, tasting, smelling, seeing, moving, and hearing. These sensory experiences help build neural connections in the child's brain that are very much important for improved memory, language development, cognitive growth, motor skills, problem-solving skills, and social interaction. But as we see in urban areas, there are several factors such as vehicular noise, offensive odors from toxic air or solid waste, and hard construction materials or poorly maintained play equipment that hamper the sensory experiences of the children and pose danger to their holistic development. As Anganwadis play an important role in providing preschool education to children, especially from the low-income communities, we have considered their play areas for developing our use case, but the methodology can essentially be replicated for all other places frequented by children, such as parks and other neighborhoods and public open spaces. In this use case, we focus on how to quantify sound, smell, and touch and check if they meet the minimum quality thresholds that are required for positive impact on young children. Now, let us look in detail at how these sensory stimuli can be measured and analyzed. Next. For each of the three senses, the methodology comprises of 4 steps: measure, rate, visualize, and analyze. For sound, we measure the sound levels using a sound level meter and sound sources. Then we rate the observations as per sound level classification and type of source. After repeating above steps at a regular time interval throughout the day, we plot the average values on map to generate the soundscape of the area. By looking at the soundscape, we can ascertain the magnitude of high noise levels and demarcate noisy zones. In case of smell, we measure hedonic tone and odor source using perception-based olfactory assessment. So hedonic tone is the degree of pleasantness of odor and defines how annoying it can be. Then we rate the observations as per the hedonic tone class and odor character. Finally, the average values for the day are plotted onto the map to generate the smellscape, which helps us identify the extent of unpleasant odor and the areas impacted by it. So similarly, for touch, we map the textures of different materials and elements present in the play area using visual observation method. The textures can be then classified as per the texture type class. The information is again then plotted on the map to create the texture map of the area, which helps us identify the variety of textures that are available in the play area. It also helps us find textures that are unsafe and maybe injurious to health for the children. Now, in case of each sense, the zones that do not meet the minimum quality criteria should be prioritized for corrective actions. Next, the users are required to use these tables, to refer these tables, which enumerate the classification for sound, smell, and touch so as to create their soundscape, smellscape, and texture map. Now we'll look at an illustrative example of building a soundscape, which will tell you the steps in detail how to do the activity. So in the very first step, we define the subject area on the map. Then in the next step, we plot the grid points on the map and record sound level and sources at each point for a given time interval. Then we plot the average sound levels for the day on the map and generate the heat map of sound levels in the subject area. In the fourth step, we identify sound level classes for each grid point. And then in the next step, we plot the predominant sound sources and sound type class on the map to create a sound type map. Then in the next step, we superimpose the sound level heat map and the sound type map to create the soundscape of that area. In this soundscape, now in the next step, we identify the zones influenced by internal and external sources of sound. And in the final step, we demarcate the zone of intervention on the soundscape, planning corrective actions. So in the similar fashion, the users can build smellscapes and texture map of their choice. So the ultimate goal is to strive for creating an enabling environment for young children where they grow, learn, and feel safe. Thank you. So if we are taking the questions at the end, then I would like to invite my colleague Mayank to present the next use case on children in street situation. Over to you, Mayank.
Thank you, Naman. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Good afternoon. So, the case study over here deals with children in street situations 0 to 6 years are present all around us, yet little is known about their number or living conditions. And why we are trying to do the interventions which you are trying to create in your cities, which is physical intervention, if we look at these are invincible people, we don't talk about them. Let's incorporate them, let's count them in our cities and create the intervention looking at their numbers and their physical condition. We are here to shed light on these children who struggle to survive, who are denied basic rights such as shelter, food, education, drinking water, and sanitation. Why we are trying to do this? If you know, in census 2011, 0.94 million homeless people reside in urban India, out of which 0.11 million people were children at the age group 0 to 6 years. A study was done by Save the Children organization in Delhi, where they came up to that we have less shelter home as compared to people who are sleeping in the public spaces or on the street. This gap was only possible because the data was available. So there exists no mechanism or no institutional mechanism at the city level where regular update of children in street situation can take place. Next step is, this is why we need to count these people and give them the basic amenities. First, the next step is to define these children. There are three types of children. One is children from street families. These children stay with their parents on the street and work on the street. Street living children, these children are alone and they stay on the street and they work on the street. Street working children are children who work on the street but they go back to their home. Why we are considering all these three scenarios? If you look at this report, there was a survey done in 5 cities wherein all these three categories played a role. In Lucknow, if you look at, there were 82% which were child or street family. Same way in Mughal Sarai, you had people who were there in street working children, and the Kolkata, Patna, and Hyderabad. Next is, after defining these three children, we are going to come to the methodology. The methodology consists of 3 steps. One is creating the questions for survey. These questions are specific to 0 to 6 years, and they are on the basis of education, food, health and sanitation, mobility, and their location. The second is conduct the survey. How we are conducting. So this use case, we have developed a playful physical game board where the children, with the help of their caregivers and a surveyor, who can teach them about how to go about it and go with this survey. After doing the survey, the data is collected and collated and analyzed so that specific intervention can be made in your project. So this step can be followed in your area where the NNC challenge is taking place, to count these people in, and based on your interventions which are taking place, you can include them firstly. So first step is creating questions. This consists of 29. First step is count them, and there are 10 basic questions to be asked. The game board consists of 29 questions. The sample questions are there on the right, and this is not the full survey. If you want, I would circulate it among you all, the complete survey which is there. So basically, first is location. Where are these children located? Are they on the footpath, pavement, under bridge, religious, park, railway station? Then where do they stay? Where are the 3 places they can mark on it? So these are the basic questions which can be asked in first go. Now let's come to the interactive physical game board. This is a part of game board. It has 29 steps. If you look, you start from the starting. This is, of course, in English. It can be developed in local language, and also it's text heavy. So we will be making it visually representative for the children, and this will be done through the caregivers and the surveyors which are there. So when you go start from the top, and then you select your location. Then there are various cards which can be used. So you just select those cards and keep it over there. In that way, we will be able to collate the information in a short span of time. Same way, these cards will also have an image to it. So there is a text image in the front and text at the back, so that people can understand, even the children can understand with their caregivers. Next is, after collating the data, after we have done this survey, we are going to collate this data. This is a simple Excel analysis which we can do, wherein first we type what is the type of CISS is there. So if you look at the first graph, let's talk about in location A, you have street living children as maximum. So there can be intervention, there can be programs which could reunite these street children with their family. These are and then you come to the age-wise, and why are they on the street? Same way, there are questions related to their drinking water, toilets, road safety. wherein you would be able to gauge that how many people are access to the toilet, free access to the toilet, or the drinking water is there as they are on the road. So what are the safety measures which has to be taken care of specific to the CIS? So there are these questions mentioned in that survey in the complete playful dashboard game manner. So playful board is there, game which can be used. This is the complete scenario wherein you do first, you can imply this in your city, take the survey, collect the data, analyze, and then quickly do interventions which you are trying to do, including these people, so that we can make them visible in the cities, which will be very helpful for the children at street situation. Thank you so much. And any questions, please do let me know.
Mine, really?
So I would now like to call upon Udit, who would be talking about mobility aspect for the children.
Mine, can you give me the sharing rights?
Yeah, it's a little slow. Yeah, I've given you the right.
I hope everyone can see my slide.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Is it now? Okay.
Udit, you may want to go into presenter mode. I think previously we could see it. Now it's
Okay.
it's we can see your next slides as well. I'm not sure if you intended.
Just give me a minute. Is it now? Nandini, is it visible now?
Yes, it's good.
So good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Mayank. Actually, this is the last use case for the day, which can give you ideas on how to crowdsource auditing of mobility infrastructure to caregivers. The mobile-based mobility accessibility audit app can help you get a neighborhood level information on experiences of caregivers and young children. Because this data represents your stakeholders, it can help you get greater buy-in for improvements. Okay. So the picture on left is everyday India. Here, urban planning and design for ITC is not only about building more playgrounds in playgrounds. Infant, toddlers, and caregivers also disproportionately challenged by poor public transport or poor mobility infrastructure. To list a few, encroached footpaths, uneven broken footpaths, absence of curb cuts, absence of shaded walkway, absence of proper bus stops, absence of accessible ITC friendly buses are the daily problems faced by everyone every day. Now the question lies, how do you capture this micro level data? To answer this question, in this use case, we have tried to develop a framework and methodology to measure accessible environment for infants and toddlers. For this use case, we took Delhi as a case example, case city, and the following are the parameters to assess accessibility for infants and toddlers. So step 1 will be to identify the parameters for accessibility. Step 2 will be to develop web-based accessibility toolkit. Step 3 will be to conduct audit using the web-based toolkit. And the final step will be to analyze the crowdsourced data. Now, detailing out the methodology to identify and prioritize parameters for accessibility, we first had to study child's pattern of trips, which is quite different from that of an adult. It involves mostly going to school or parks. For this study, a complete treatment of origin destination trip chain was identified for toddlers so that the toddler with caregiver can make their journey without any barrier or interference. The guidelines and benchmarks were referred from ITC and design guidelines. So basically, these are the guidelines shortlisted, which mostly includes safe walkable neighborhoods, safe transport, and safe and transit routes at every trip checks. For example, under origin to footpath trip, accessibility by both by steps and ramps and parks, markets and schools within 300 meters needs to be checked. Similarly, for schools within 300 meters are to be checked. Similarly, for footpaths, unobstructed footpaths, encroached pathways are to be checked. At bus stand, the most important parameters are the bus stand should have illumination and sitting arrangement. And finally, at destination, the most important parameters that needs to be checked is the destination should have public amenities like toilets, drinking waters, and breastfeeding booths. So the accessibility toolkit that we have developed was based on the selected parameters discussed before on the last slide. The features of the toolkit includes of the web-based toolkit includes enabling geolocating routes, record issues by clicking on the button, integrating of regional language to enhance greater accessibility, and finally upload photographs after every trips, which will validate the data recorded. Now, how to use the toolkit? The image on the right, on the left, gives a brief walkthrough on how to collect data, and the image on the right is how one has to observe the surroundings and collect data. So the first one is to open the app at origin. Click on start tracking button to activate GPS while surveying. Observe the origin parameters around you and start auditing the data. All the parameters are mentioned on the tool. One needs to indicate the parameters while observing it on the ground. Similarly, for this is for footpath. Observe the footpath parameters around you and start editing. Now, what we can see here, the footpaths are broken and encroached. The person surveying identified the same on the app. This is how we can. So the similarly, the same is for the bus stops. Here, the bus stop lack internal illumination and have seats for caregivers and tactile for flooring. Similarly, the person who is surveying was also identified the app. The final is the is for the destination. The destination here is the park. Seats, toddler play areas, and public amenities were available. And finally, once audited, one needs to upload the trip image of the trip, which will help administrator validate the trip. Now, all of this data collected from the toolkit is then aggregated on GIS, then analyzed. The light blue line shows the routes that are accessible to toddlers. Yellow line shows moderately accessible, and the red routes shows that it is not actually accessible to toddlers. Now the question may arise: why do we need such a tool? The spatial data and the parameters generated from the trips can be used to identify that routes that are unsafe for toddlers and therefore need an immediate intervention of relevant stakeholders in the city. Such backed analysis can also be leveraged by the city administration, planning department, academia, research organization to influence planning guidelines for local area planning, ward level planning, or zonal planning. Thank you.
So just a reminder that if you have questions, you can either raise you should be able to see a little hand symbol right below the names of the participants. You could click on that and we can call on you and you can unmute and share your question. Or alternatively, if you're not confident speaking, you can also just enter into the chat. So the floor is open for questions. I can maybe just kind of get it started by asking also, this is maybe an open question for the team, is about, who should be using the tools, and is there any kind of special training that would be needed, before you go out and actually start using them?
you want to ask this for a particular use case?
I'm asking about any of the use cases, like in terms of actually getting it applied. I mean, is there, or maybe it might be different for each of the teams, but for a city to go out and actually do this, what kind of team needs to be assembled to actually, apply it, and is there any kind of advanced preparation that needs to happen? If you could maybe speak a little bit about that.
Sure. We can, I can respond to we can take the example of, perhaps talk about the sensory stimuli one. We'll also talk about this in reference to the NNC pilot project so that it's much more, it's applicable for the audience here. So if any of the teams are looking at parks, or if you're looking at Anganwadi play areas, which are part of the amenities section of the NNC challenge, then before you sort of look at what interventions you want to do, you may want to assess these either playgrounds or parks or the play areas for Anganwadis for how stimulating they are for senses, to your senses on at least these three parameters that we've outlined. You could leverage the Anganwadi workers to become your surveyors. These are, this is qualitative analysis. So if we, once we're happy to share the indicators for each of these senses, then any kind of surveyor would require very basic sort of training on what is, what is an unpleasant smell and what are the various types of smell. I think that's a very easy sort of quick training to be done. And after that, very easily you can sort of lay out, carve out various zones, just the way Naman had shown. And it's very easy to then qualitatively just assess, how they're performing on sound, smell, and touch. So I think that's a fairly easy one to do. Similarly, even for the street children one, if we were to take the street children one, again, we're happy to share the toolkit. So the cities don't have to invest time in developing the toolkit or the questionnaire. Even the game board is more or less sort of ready. You may want to tailor it for your own city using the same language, or you may want to alter some of the questions depending on your neighborhood. So the back-end work is sort of in place. Then it is just about training your surveyors then, which is again a very quick sort of quick training of the surveyor, perhaps could take 2 days. On sensitizing the toolkit, and then sort of a little bit of sensitizing on how to conduct training with children. And then the actual survey is pretty straightforward. If it's a simple questionnaire using a tablet, then it's a very simple yes or no and conversational. But if it's the one which is much more engaging, then it's sort of the surveyor would have to have some interpersonal skills, the same language skills and soft skills to be able to engage these kids. We also realized that the information that you might get from the kids may not be very, very accurate, and hence you might have to rely on information that you can get from the caregivers. But this is one way of engagement, and so you'd have to supply that survey information with other, you can verify that with other sources as you undertake. Answering your other part of the question in terms of who would use it, I mean, I think in the context of the NNC challenge, right now, the administrators are the ones who are, city administrators are the ones who are undertaking this, overseeing and anchoring this challenge. But for various use cases, there can be different anchors even outside of this challenge. If it is the air quality one, it could be a civil society organization like yourself, like WRI, that does a lot of advocacy work. Then that's a very useful sort of way for you to narrow down which areas are most polluted or not. And then you can also undertake tactical urbanism as you do. And any other kind of outreach efforts that you may want to undertake. WHO may want to undertake that as a way to identify which are kids that are most at risk. UNICEF may want to, follow the same process to understand which are kids that they need to do outreach to. Perhaps like if there is any sort of rolling out of nutrition or any medicines or masks that need to be rolled out, then it's very easy. Then this sort of methodology helps you, helps you target who are your most at-risk infants and toddlers.
Thanks, Gina. There's a question actually in the chat here about how can we include parameters focusing on the overall experience of air and noise related pollution, or the air and the ambient environment within parameters of accessibility, where the accessibility parameters currently focus largely on infrastructural components. How might this be possible? I think the question is directed towards the first and last presentation, so yours and Udit's presentation.
Sure. Udit, do you want to come in, or I'm also happy to take it?
Yeah, just let me get to the question once more time.
Sure. So it's how to include parameters focusing on the overall experience of air and noise pollution within the parameters of accessibility that currently focus on infrastructural setting. Perhaps the person who asked this also, if they want to clarify any part of this, they can.
Exactly. Since it's a mobile app, it will be very difficult to get parameters like air and noise from the mobile. But if we have certain sensors in the mobile, maybe in the future we can do that.
Another question I actually had for you, you mentioned about regional language in the app. Could you share? I mean,
Yes.
which regional languages it's?
So right now, for the current app, I have used Hindi as the regional language, but as we have multiple languages all over the India, it can be changed to all the languages, all the other state languages, the preferred languages they use. So in the starting of that, there should be an option where one can choose the language. The surveyor or the person who is actually doing the survey can actually change the language to their preferred language. This one can do. Assuming not everyone knows English. I mean,
right. So okay, so they can change. There's not. It's not that there's a preset set of languages on there.
There will be a preset.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, maybe just for everyone's information, maybe you could add it in the chat or something. So that's good to know. And the other question I wanted to ask actually was to Naman about the tool on sensory mapping around Anganwadis. Is that I think Gina also touched on this, but could that same methodology be applied in other sites as well? I mean, in a park, for instance, or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, in that manner, the methodology is pretty agnostic of the type of place. So a park is also very similar to the Anganwadi play area because it has natural as well as some man-made infrastructure elements, which will render some sort of or some quality of sensory experiences to that particular place. And the basic thing within this methodology is demarcating the area and then putting a grid on that area so that at different points you can measure whatever you want to measure, be it the smell, be it the sound levels, or be it the textures for the different elements which are going to be there. It's just that the extent of the area in case of park or a public open space will increase, but the methodology is definitely replicable to these areas.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, but I think if you do have questions about this, then you can also reach out directly to the team, or we can kind of put you in touch about this. So is it Gina? Maybe you could also share if this is available anywhere on SmartNet, or if anyone wants to refer to any of these materials, how would they follow up?
They would have to get in touch with us.
Okay.
This is still not available publicly. It is still in draft stage, and we will publish this at some point, but not as yet. But cities should feel free to reach out to us if they want any kind of support on thinking through or developing or using any of these methodologies to incorporate in their pilot design.
Okay, I think I still don't see any of the questions at this time. So yeah, so please reach out directly to the team if you do have questions about this, or if you want more information. I think we will close the session for now, but before we do, I would also just want to say thank you to Gino, Mayank, and Naman for presenting these tools, and obviously to Rahul sir for introducing the session as well. And thank you to all of the participants for being here. Just a reminder that we will be having the third workshop, which is focused on design. So moving from data collection into using that, translating that data into design solutions. That workshop is next week on Tuesday at 3 p.m. And we will, as part of that workshop, have some breakout activities. So just a reminder, I think also that when you sign in, if you can include your city's name next to your name, that'll help us when we're organizing the groups. So please do join us next week for that. Yeah, thank you again. Have a good afternoon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
मेरा संग्रहण